Omondi. Daniel, I welcome you to the podium. You may unmute. I have gone off a little bit because one of the things I realize is oftentimes as we introduce individuals that folks out there do not really get to retain, the measure of the person that's speaking before them. And Daniel Juma Omondi, if I'm not mistaken, Daniel, you are from Kenya, correct? Or did I get that wrong in my note? Yes, right. Indeed. And as have been spoken already, that Kenya is preparing now for its presidential and parliamentary elections taking place on August 9th. One has come to realize that elections on the continent can be quite contentious. And certainly the case of Kenya leaves us with some anxiety, because we know that in years past, we've had some very contentious elections. And I think Raila Odinga perhaps has been the only candidate to ever win in court. I think it all went all the way to the Supreme Court, that there have been proven evidence where the ballots were tampered with electronically. But I want to probably just tee you off with one thought, because I'm understanding that the political maturity of the electorate is increasing, where ethnicity may not have its influence as much as people want change and modernization. So with that, I want to invite you to the podium. But before I do so, if you were to introduce Daniel Omondi, what would you say about him that would let us know a little bit about his upbringing, about how he came to his profession, and what is that hidden fact about him that we wouldn't know just by casually reading his bio? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you, Eric, Walcott, and everyone here. Again, let me thank Watch Democracy Grow for organizing this forum today. Yeah, so Daniel is, I call myself a father of two, and husband, and I am someone who loves peace. So I work for the Global Peace Foundation as the country director. I believe that one of my most important missions in Africa is to inspire the next generation of African leaders. So, and the work that I do passionately is geared towards that. But before I joined the Global Peace Foundation, I worked for the Korean government for 10 years as a trade and marketing researcher. So I helped very many Korean companies get markets here in Kenya and also the region. Yeah, so those two are my areas: trade and peace diplomacy. So economic diplomacy and peace diplomacy are my passion. I also do some politics. In 2019, I ran for Member of Parliament of Ugenya constituency in Siaya County. I didn't do very well. We were 4 candidates. I came the 3rd. So this time I decided I'm not running again. Took a break so that we can preach peace, and we see what happens when it comes.
Did you say Daniel in Siaya County? Or?
Yes, in Siaya County. That's where I come from. I come from the same county as Obama.
Alego. Is that the Alego in the off of not too far from Kisumu area down the way?
Yes. So from Alego you go to Ugenya. So
yes,
Alego and Ugenya are separated by River Nzoia.
Yeah. I visited that area not too long ago.
Okay.
So yes.
Did you visit Obama's home? Obama's father's
You
home?
know, though the village, I think, was probably about 5 or 10 miles up the street. And
Okay.
although I was promised to go, I think we got distracted. But but I enjoyed myself, and maybe on the next trip I'll visit Obama's home. I know it's a major attraction now, and
Yes.
I believe his home has contributed to a lot of development as far as roads and infrastructure. So I was also happy to hear that. Indeed, indeed.
That's
Thank you.
correct. So when you come next, give me a shout, and we can connect for tea or some nyama choma,
Yes.
whatever you like. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, indeed. All righty.
Yes.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, so we're gonna have elections in the next 17 days. Kenya will be having elections, presidential elections, and of course, parliamentary and civic seats. The election is very, very tight. As you know, the political dynamics in our country has changed, where we have seen for the first time a member of the opposition, actually in 2018, Raila Odinga had a handshake with President President Kenyatta, immediately after the second round of election, which Raila boycotted. This happened after the courts nullified the election of the 2017 presidential election as a result of, like you said, the electoral fraud. The court ordered that they go back for new elections. But since there were no guarantees from government about, how do you call it? About conformity with the new regulation, with the High Court, Supreme Court regulations, Raila thought it's going to be useless for him to take part in that election, and he decided to boycott the elections. And with that, President Kenyatta had a free pass. So he basically competed against himself, and he won the elections. But that again provided him with the legitimacy. So personally, I had a problem with that. Because I thought that once the court has told you to go back to the polls, Raila should have gone back to the polls. But by leaving the constitutional pathway, he basically legitimized the regime of President Kenyatta. And,
point of question: do you think that he disenfranchised his electorate by not contesting the second round?
Yes. Basically, his supporters, most of them felt disappointed and disenfranchised by not contesting. And so many places actually boycotted the polls, especially the Nyanza region did not take part. They boycotted. There were no elections in so many places, actually 3 counties in Nyanza. So they were very disappointed. And after the election, he came up with a resistance movement called the National Resistance Movement. Basically, where he was urging Kenyans, his supporters, to boycott products, certain products, for example, Safaricom, also Brookside Dairies, which is basically owned by President. Which of course was discussed as economic sabotage. And yet, I think there was no alternative. You can't ask. The flaw in that was that while he was asking for us to boycott those products, he was not providing an alternative. So the country actually was headed towards anarchy. And I must really congratulate the President Kenyatta, because actually that led to his swearing in. After the elections, he actually went and swore himself in. There were, divided opinions on that. Others said he committed treason, and others said that there was nothing wrong with that. But after the swearing in, which of course was illegal, they came up with, suddenly they appeared from nowhere, and they had this handshake in March 18th of 2018, and they decided to come together, and Raila decided to unconditionally support President Kenyatta, and they agreed on some 9-point plans that culminated into steps to be able to change the constitution in what they called was the Building Bridges Initiative. Immediately after that handshake and the culmination into the Building Bridges Initiative, they both visited the White House. They were hosted at the White House, they were actually hailed. I think the president then really hailed them for actually coming in together. So what had it that there was some pressure from the White House at that time for them to be able to do that. But since that, so they took on this partnership that actually led to Raila not participating in his opposition responsibilities. And the deputy president, who did not like the handshake, actually started criticizing this whole constitutional change process. It went, and the matter went to court and stopped. Actually, the constitution was stopped by the courts. Otherwise, we would have had a constitutional amendment that would have seen us, of course, have introduction of prime minister, power sharing, deputy prime minister, and several other cocktail of amendments that they proposed that were thrown out. However, the court said that it is the process, the fact that President Kenyatta led that process. The court criticized, that he was not, as the president, he did not have the privilege of utilizing that path to constitutional change. And that issue was thrown out. And so now the next thing was basically just to go for the elections with the current constitution as it is. So the president has been supportive of Raila Odinga, and the deputy president is now the opposition leader. So it has been an interesting turn of events. So the deputy has refused to resign. The best practice would be, if the deputy president is not happy, he should resign. But this one refused to resign. He's earning his salary, he's having all the securities, and of course, campaigning for presidency. So right now, the latest polls show that Raila is ahead with some 3 or 4 points, different polls. But it's a tight poll. People saying it could go either way. So Raila has a slight edge, but the deputy president is someone who is very, very focused. He doesn't drink, unlike Raila, who drinks some whiskey, but the deputy president doesn't drink. And so we don't know what surprise is going to pull. So that election could go either way. So my organization, we're working with Kenya private, sectors and several, we have been on the forefront of preaching peace this election, calling on Kenyans, not to go the way of 207, 208, that whoever becomes president should be acceptable to all. Other than that, there's also another gentleman, there are 4 candidates. There's another gentleman called Professor Wajakoya, who is running on the premise, on the platform of legalizing marijuana. And as a result of that, he has a lot of support from young people. I think most of these young people are excited about the prospect of being allowed to smoke marijuana in Wajakoya government. So he's polling at 4%, while the others are 40%. The last candidate is basically less than 1%, but he's a bishop, and he's basically just running. Some of these people are just running, for the sake of running. We had more than 50 aspirants expressing interest to run for president. So the ballot box would have been a big booklet. But I think the government and the IEBC found a way of knocking out many of these aspirants by coming up with really, really tough conditions, coming up with signatures, copies of IDs of your supporters, and most of them were knocked out on that basis. So we look forward to elections. We look forward to a new government, a new regime from the 9th onwards. If there is no clear winner in the elections, we're going to have a runoff. That means President Kenyatta will stay in power for another 2 to 3 months as we go for the runoff. So that is the situation as it is regarding Kenyan election. What we do not expect, even though there is, it's tightly contested, we do not expect violence. Of course, we should have pockets of, because our democracy, what I always say is that we are a vibrant democracy, we are very loud democracy. People are free. Kenya is now like almost like America. People are free to say what they want to do. People criticize the president, people criticize the government, and they can be assured that they can go back to sleep without getting worried. So what's happened in Kenya cannot happen, for example, in Uganda and in other countries. So even though we have this political noise going on, what we appreciate, and I think Watch Democracy will appreciate that Kenya is one of those countries in the region that is a beacon for democracy. We have a government that is of course allowing free speech, and people are free to say what they want to do, what they want to say, and without fear of being reprimanded by the government. Yeah.
Thank you. I know that with Raila Odinga, there is some thought that his age is the challenge, right? He's up there in age, that a significant part of your electorate is now young, probably under 30 years old. How is that playing out on the campaign trail?
Yeah, so age is an issue. He's now in his 70s. Yes, he's in his 70s, but he's using the American analogy, Joe Biden. So he's saying if Joe Biden was elected president, why not him? And so age is though is an issue, but we have seen, of course, in Africa electing very, very old people. I think in Zambia also, we had a president who was elected who was very old, but he ended up, of course, dying. But of course, he's very, very strong. He goes to the gym every morning. He likes working out. He likes wearing the latest fashion, outfit. And I don't think he's bothered by that. And also his running mate. One of the things that has given him an advantage is the running mate that he is. He appointed a woman running mate, Martha Karua. Martha Karua is the leader of NARC Kenya Party. She was one of those ladies who was very, very hardcore supporters of President Kibaki at the time when Raila's votes were stolen. She was a hardliner even during the negotiations that Kofi Annan superintended over at that time. But somehow in Kenya, in politics, there are no permanent friends or enemies. Absolutely. So we have seen Martha Karua and Raila Odinga coming together, in this presidency. And our presidency is like a co-presidency whereby once you are a deputy president, you cannot be fired. And you only resign if you want. So they are together, and by appointing the first ever deputy president as a running mate, there is excitement, especially from women voters. Those voters, especially middle class, civil society, who would never have voted for Raila, are now looking at the prospect of voting, for him. So we have a big number of undecided voters, almost 4 million undecided until now. Wow. So there is a possibility that these undecided voters are the ones
Right.
that are waiting to see, and they could go Raila's way.
Indeed, indeed. So Raila is Luo, correct? And
Yes.
his running mate is what? Is she?
It's Kikuyu.
Is
Kikuyu.
Kikuyu. Tell us a little bit about the vice president and a little bit about his background. Has he chosen a running mate?
Yes. So the deputy president is William Ruto, Dr. William Ruto.
Yes.
He is. He has been in 2007. Actually, he was in the same side with Raila Odinga. So when Raila Odinga's votes were stolen, he was on the forefront of fighting for Raila Odinga's, rights, the electoral rights. But that is what he, of course, people say that he was using that electoral grievance, to drive Kikuyus from the Rift Valley. As you know, President Kenyatta had bought land, colonial land, and resettled many of his Kikuyu tribesmen into the Rift Valley. So that caused a lot of grievance from locals in the Rift Valley who thought that most of these lands were basically fertile lands, that were given by the President Kenyatta to the Kikuyus. So, so Ruto was using, of course, these grievance, and he actually utilized, the electoral grievance as a scapegoat, and utilized that to drive, displace the Kikuyu community. This is basically what caused the 2007-2008 post-election violence. Many people think that post-election violence was caused by, of course, the election was a trigger, but it was planned, and that's why the case went to the ICC. So he was accused with the president of crimes against humanity, and they were elected when they had that ICC yoke on their neck. And after that, they were able to, of course, win those cases. But the way he won that case, especially on his side, the way some of the witnesses actually withdrew their statement, there was, and there is a case ongoing now at the ICC. One of the witnesses, who have been accused of buying off witnesses, is now at the ICC. The case will be decided very, very soon. So this may touch him, but again, these people have a way, Kenyan politicians have a way of utilizing a bad news for their advantage. In 2007, they used the ICC to get a big turnout from their community, saying that, we are under siege, so there's only way we can beat ICC is if we went to State House. So he's a very charismatic gentleman. He's very angry. Lately, he appears as very angry. Even his running mate is the only presidential candidate who has a male running mate. But the male running mate has a court case. He has been accused of embezzling funds, almost 200 million, more than 200 million Kenya shillings. And so he has a lot of court cases, but he was appointed anyway to be a running mate. And so one of the reasons why I think he's a favorite of Ruto is because he comes from the president's tribe. He has worked, the deputy president candidate has worked as a PA to the president. So he knows the president, but he's actually on the forefront of attacking the president, or basically insulting the president. And because there's nothing the president can do, because he is allowed the freedom of speech. So he is being used by Ruto, of course, to mobilize, of course, the Kikuyu support, and to blame the president for the fact that many Kikuyus are still suffering, living in poverty as a result of his presidency. So, so this is something that is going on. So there's likelihood of, because we have both Gachagua and Martha are running mates, but both are from Kikuyu. So there's chances that they will divide the Kikuyu votes into half. But the likely scenario is Raila may get 30% from Kikuyu and Ruto gets 70%, because Ruto has been campaigning since 2017. He started campaigning. So Raila just started campaigning the other day. So he has been campaigning because when he was relieved of his duties, he wasn't relieved, but he was not assigned any duties. So he used all his time to campaign.
Right.
Yes.
But speak to me about the sentiment that this is Raila's time. Raila Odinga may have won, the only candidate who may have won presidential election twice and has never served as president. Is there a sentiment by the electorate in Kenya that this is his time?
Yes, this is, they are calling it the Mandela moment. Raila has promised to serve for only one term if he wins this presidency. Right now, he's 8. By the time he's finished with the first term, he'll be over 80. And he's not expected to run for a second term. And I think that's one of the reasons why most of these candidates supported him. Martha Karua agreed to be his deputy running mate, deputy president, and also Kalonzo, who was also running for president, also agreed to support him for one term. So there's a general view that he is a transition president. And also the problem with the deputy president, though he's a good guy, disciplined, he has good policies, he's very good in debates, but he has anger management issues. And he's dealing with a lot of baggage. And that's one of the reasons why, even when it comes to foreign policy, foreign governments will be more comfortable dealing with Raila than with Ruto, because both of them have anger issues and both of them are very charismatic, and they are threatening, even to take the president to jail if they win and all that. So we don't have that is resonating with the people, but I think some of those issues are actually driving away some of the voters that would have voted for Ruto. So Raila is likely to be president. And one of the reasons why, of course, he has won before, but because he did not have support of the security, the government. So now he has that on his side. So there's nothing that can stop him from being sworn in. Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much. I just want to say, I hope. Can you give us an idea of how many electoral observers that you've been able to credential? Do you sense that there's enough international observers as well? What do you think is lacking around the observation of the elections in Kenya that's soon to come?
Yeah, I don't have a number that I have to get from the IEBC, but we already have observer teams coming. But I think even as yesterday, now we have already AU, IGAD, UN observer missions are already in the country, getting ready for the polls. We have, of course, also local observation teams, who are already being trained and are getting ready for the polls. Yeah, so there's quite a number. And of course, with the EU also has under IRI. And also, and
NDI is there as well. NDI is there as well. Okay.
Yes, they're also here. We had a meeting with them. NDI, RI, they have a joint observation team. We have had the pleasure of having a meeting with them, headed by President Goodluck Jonathan. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so very much. Really appreciate your presentation, and I look forward to seeing you in Siaya sometime soon. Oh, Alego.
Yes,
Eric, before I hand over to you, I want to just extend my our sincere appreciation for the international participators. Right now, it's almost like, I think in Nairobi, it's 10. So they are duressing so high. That's why you could see me jumping him in before. So really, Daniel, we appreciate. And Daniel is also becoming a member, actually board member of Watch Democracy Grew in Kenya. So he's one big shout out for democracy that we cannot really ignore. So Daniel, our hands are on you and our hearts are on Kenya. Again, it's all about voting, but there is no way any human life is worth a ballot paper. Vote, whoever has won, that's fine. The good thing, you are exercising term limit and free democracy. You can endure and the next person come, but when we have preserved lives. Thank you, Eric.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Daniel, I'm having a question. If people want to support Global Peace Foundation Kenya, how do they go about doing so?
Yeah, if you want to support Global Peace Foundation Kenya, I can, you know, we have our office in the US, so
yes,
we can actually, you know, we can share with you. Our website is globalpeace.org, and then you can be able to donate to them, and then they can transfer the funds to us. Huh? If you go to the globalpeace.org, you can see the donate tab, and then you can donate. I think it's easier for you that way. And then you can say this funding should be sent to Global Peace Kenya. Otherwise, if you like, I can also send our details, you know, and I can do that on email, and you can
enter your details in the chat for us, Daniel, for those who may want to reach out to you, who may want to support you and the work that you guys are doing in Global Peace Foundation Kenya. And my hats off to you guys, and I wish you peaceful elections. And if there's anything else you want to close with, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to close with a small issue of the problem going on in the DRC, Eastern DRC. As you know, we have had this problem between Rwanda and DRC, and Kenya government has been on the forefront of mediating that problem. And the AU was able to ask Angolan government, President Lourenco, to be able to mediate between President Tshisekedi and President Kagame. So in their meeting, they agreed to have a cessation of hostilities, which of course was signed in Angola. But even after that was done, we still have clashes going on in Eastern DRC. But people have a lot of faith in the President Lourenco ability to be able to mediate that. So we hope that eventually the ongoing mediation can be able to bring the two governments to stop. As you know, Rwanda is being alleged to support the M23 rebels in Congo, and also Congo is supporting some other rebels in Rwanda in the border. So this is one of the hot issues around, and I am hoping also as Watch Democracy gets involved, I think we can be able to follow up this issue so that we have peace in the Great Lakes region. Yeah.
What is behind the issue? Is it an issue of territory, or?
It's a big issue of territory, of course. As you know, it's one of the problems of caused by the Berlin Conference. As you know, the colonialists just came and divided our borders. And when they did that, and for example, Rwanda and Congo borders, so the communities, you know, in the borders, some remained in the Congo side and some remained in the Rwanda side. So, and in the Congo, most of these, for example, the M23 kind of rebels, they have, of course, Rwandese origins, you know, but the people in Congo treat them as Rwandese because they look like Rwandese. So they have been fighting, and they took over, of course, Goma and Eastern Congo, fighting for some kind of autonomy in that region, looking for recognition. But this has taken a long time. And so the problem also is that the DRC government has never been able to have a stable army that can be able to keep DRC as a stable nation. And that gives leeway, you know, to rebels to walk freely in Eastern Congo. And this is a big problem. Even during Kabila's time, we had this problem. So, yeah. So
well, I know, I take note that my good friend, Maurice Carney, is coming on next, and he'll be speaking more in greater detail, maybe about that and other things. And thank you so very much for raising that issue, and certainly Watch Democracy Grow. We'll be looking into it even more than they are now.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Daniel, if time is not a disadvantage, you can stay on to the next discussion, because I know you have a lot to bring on the table, especially when it comes to the secession treaty, the weaknesses. Is it going to really materialize? What would we do really to promote peace in that region? It's all about peace. Eric, over to you, sir.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. All righty. Well, we're going to transition on to our next speaker. We certainly want to thank again Daniel Omondi for his wonderful presentation, and we look forward to staying connected with him. The next speaker is Mr. Maurice Carney. Maurice Carney is a co-founder and executive director of the Friends of Congo. He has fought with Congolese for over 20 years in the struggle for human dignity and control of their country. Mr. Carney worked with civic associations in West Africa, provided training and research methodology and survey. He served as the interim Africa Working Group coordinator for Reverend Jesse Jackson while he was a special envoy to Africa. He has provided analysis on the Congo for Al Jazeera, ABC News, Democracy Now!, Real News Network, Pembazuga News, All Africa News, and a host of other media outlets. Another important factoid about Mr. Maurice Carney, he's also a Howard University alumnus, and he and I actually spent some time in Benin together, in Benin, West Africa. So I haven't seen Mr. Maurice Carney in many, many years, but a brother is always a brother, and it's nice to see you, my brother. Welcome, welcome, and watch Democracy Grow. Indeed.
What an amazing surprise. To see you. It's a great pleasure. Thank you for welcoming me. And as I said, I was very pleased to see that you're part of the discussion. And we go way back, to our time back in Benin. So it's good to be here. The topic that I was charged to address, I think Danielle touched on it a little bit, deals with the Great Lakes region and the instability that has pervaded the region for a quarter century now. It's been 25 years when the conflict in the Congo was triggered by a series of invasions, led initially by Rwanda, Uganda, Burundi, and Angola in 1996. That was the first invasion that occurred, resulted in the overthrow of the longtime dictator Mobutu Sese Seko, who had been in power for 32 years. And that overthrow of the invasion that led to the overthrow ultimately resulted in the installation of Laurent Desire Kabila in May of 1997, who became president. And Kabila was backed, of course, by Paul Kagame of Rwanda and Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. There are a whole series of books that have been written around this chapter, but I highly recommend a film in French. It's called L'Afrique en Morceaux, Africa in Pieces, done by the Egyptian filmmaker Djihan El Tari. And that film is actually on Friends of Congo YouTube channel. And in there, she interviews Kagame and Museveni and all the major players, and they give you the real deal as to why the invasion actually occurred. There are a number of rationales that were proffered especially by Kagame and Museveni, but there's some underlying factors that contributed to the 96 invasion and actually subsequent occupation of the Congo that obtained to this day. Now, after the installation of Kabila in May 1997, a second invasion took place because Kabila fell out with his backers. Remember, Kabila didn't have an army, didn't have a military. When he was first presented, he was presented as a spokesperson of a group, alliance of they call the AFDL, group, Alliance of Force Democratique pour la Libération du Congo. He was a spokesperson. So he was the armies that were doing the fighting were Rwandans and the Ugandans and Angolans, of course. But in 1998, when Kabila was president of the Congo and had several high-level officials who were actually leading different ministries of the Congolese government, were Rwandan officials, most notably James Kabarebe. He was the head of the Congolese military. So here it is that Mobutu was overthrown, Kabila installed,